William Jones in 1790 came up with an idea of a sheet anchor of Indian history, and he realized that the Greek accounts in the invasion of Alexander in 323 BCE, they had a king named Zandrams as a contemporary of Alexander, and then he was in search whether Indian accounts, is there any name which will match with that, and he came out with a suggestion that Chandragupta Maurya would have been that person. Now those who have read those Greek accounts, you know that when Alexander came, his direct contemporary as mentioned in those accounts is Zandrams. Compare the Chandramsha with Zandrams. Actually, it's a mistake to consider Zandrams as Sandracotus. Zandrams is contemporary to Alexander, and Sandracotus is the king of Palibotra whom Megasthenes visited. So Sandracotus most probably would be the Chandragupta of the Gupta dynasty, and Zandrams would be the Chandramsha of the Naga dynasty. Do you think this is some indescript king? No. S.C.Rai Choudhury already observed that this Chandramsha is the king of this iron pillar of Mehrauli. This pillar actually used to be in the Udaygiri in Vidisha, and the inscription clearly says that this king won the territory all the way from Balika to the Banga. Namaskar, I am Mrugendra Vinod and I am back with Srijan Talks. Previously, you might remember that we discussed the geography of Saraswati and Aryabhata as per the Vedic ritualistic manuals. Unfortunately, the general feedback has been that the talks were too obscure and people could not really comprehend what probably I intended to say. Partly I am to blame because my styles are probably not refined, but partially all of us are also to blame because we are so far away from our Vedic heritage. We have lost the language, the rituals, even the customs. We have, it has become for us a sort of a foreign account ourselves. Now this time, but I have a very interesting discovery to share with you. It is about the Puranic chronology. Now, some of us who have not studied Sanskrit language or is neither aware of the generally the what is called sacred literature, we may not be aware that the so-called Puranas, which are supposed to be mythological accounts and people have ideas about them, but then they have a quite a nice looking chronological account all the way from Yudhishthira to the period of Guptas. Now scholars have been already studying this, though general public may not be aware of this, but whatever they have done, whether it is a service or a disservice, is a difficult thing to even decide. Why? Because William Jones in 1790 came up with an idea of a sheet anchor of Indian history. He was already a student of Greek literature, and he was as a foreigner looking at this Bharatiya ancient literature, and he realized that the Greek accounts in the invasion of Alexander in 323 BCE, they had a king named Zandrams as a contemporary of Alexander, and then he was in search whether Indian accounts, is there any name which will match with that, and he came out with a suggestion that Chandragupta Maurya would have been that person. Later on, Max Muller in 1860 took it up and then put a seal of authority on it, that yes, this is the sheet anchor of Indian history, that Sandracotus or Zandrams is the Chandragupta Maurya. And later historians, they have reinforced it by finding these rock edicts and pillars of so-called Devanam Priyadarshi Ashoka as the Ashoka Maurya. Though there is no mention of Maurya there. There is nothing to directly tell us that it is the Maurya dynasty Ashoka. But then there are some Ceylonese accounts and etc. And it was settled later on that this has to be the Ashoka Maurya. The time has been already fixed for Chandragupta Maurya, and that is 323 BC. So naturally Ashoka Maurya also would be in the 3rd century BCE, and the whole history has been set up with this. Now on the other side, Bharatiya scholars since the 19th century itself have been bitterly contesting this sheet anchor, and they have been searching as to the right answer to this sort of speculative whatever identification you have done cannot be the sheet anchor. Sheet anchor has to be something which is very highly reliable, something which all parties can easily agree upon. That is the sheet anchor. That is supposed to be the sheet anchor. But here so is not the case. Bharatiyas have been contesting this sheet anchor itself. And we have recently discovered a very interesting bilateral identification. Now, if you see what they did, they only found the Indian king's name in the Greek accounts. But for two linear lists to be put into equivalence, what you need is a bilateral identification. A Greek king also should be identified in Indian accounts, and its contemporary Indian king should be identified in the other accounts. Then only we can say that these two linear lists have been now made parallel or made equivalent. And then linearly we can look into the periods which are not available in the other history. Say Indian accounts of say previous times are not available in Greek account. So then we can put them into the timeline. Now if this is agreeable to everybody, it would be very interesting to know whether Greek kings have they been named in Indian accounts? Somewhere where contemporary Indian king also has been named by Greek account. This is the question, and happily I am at least suggesting that I had a theory for the complete chronology slowly developed over based upon my previous discoveries which I shared with you, and which were about the geography, and geography needed space time. So I was little discussing the time frame over there. But here now I will be talking about precise years based upon evidences. So the invitation had the true timeline which was suggested by the editors, but then actually I feel that I would rather claim it to be authentic timeline. Now what is the difference? True is for the divine. Satyena vai devaha. Anrutena manushyaha. Humanum is to err. We are bound to err. We are tentative. We have to grope, and we can be only, as we say, pramanika. We can gather a knowledge based on certain evidences, if properly gathered, and then we have to use the correct rules of logic. We should not err in inferring, and then we can know our past. We are not clairvoyants. We cannot see in the past. Neither, if we assume in our literature that people were Trikaladarshi, then probably all accounts are defied. So the modern scholarship requires that we base our theories on evidences and proper methods of inferences. And I have endeavored to do it in this, and you are the judges to see whether I have succeeded. I will start with the end results, because most of us would be not interested in actually how we came to certain conclusions. So I am first coming to the conclusions. Now these are the direct results of Puranic dynasties of what is called Kali age. In fact, there was a book by Parjitar of a very similar title, and he did a great effort in collecting the Puranas, the manuscripts, and various readings he collected there. But he could not, he was baffled with the long durations of dynasties, which he was not ready to admit. And you know, he was already fixated with the idea of the sheet anchor with 322 BCE as the time of Chandragupta Maurya. So naturally he had to undo all these things rather, and we have not undone anything. We have taken the evidence as it is. But then what we needed there was, if you see, these lists begin with Yudhishthira Epoch. They basically, their sheet anchor or the zero period is Yudhishthira Epoch. And now this Yudhishthira Epoch, which is also the birth of Parikshita, it starts with that. How, now the question was for us, how does one gather in our times? Like, how do we relate to that Yudhishthira Epoch? How do we find out that? There was a very direct specific year mentioned for it in terms of Shaka year. The testimonies of Garga, as found in Varahamihira's Bratsavita, and it goes like Yudhishthira period lasted for 2526 years before Shaka. So this is obvious that if we know the Shaka year, we can easily go to the Yudhishthira Epoch. But then how to get the Shaka Epoch? I will come to it later on when I discuss the methods as to how we have derived this. But then if you look at this, I have started with the Aryabhatiyam Epoch. Now Aryabhata first is well known to be the first Paurusheya Siddhanta astronomer of Bharata. Now his epoch has been, as we will show later, there are certain ways to derive this Aryabhatiyam epoch, which is, we have discovered it to be 26 March minus 163. Now this minus 163 is the astronomical counting, which turns out to be 164 BCE. Okay. Now if we put this as the Aryabhatiyam epoch, then we have two alternate ways of coming to the Yudhishthira epoch. First is to go to Kali age by adding 3179 to this Shaka era, and then from there we can bring by Kalahana Rajatarangini by subtracting 653 from it, and the end result is what we have is 3762 is the Kali age and 3109 is the Yudhishthira epoch. For the time being, we will assume that what I have done is right, and let us see the result. So now this 3109 is not much different from that 3102 for the Kali age, which is generally popularly known, and I will show as to why this is the difference of 8 years is not very important. The methodology, the way it has been derived, the evidence-based approach, that distinguishes this study. And now what happens further? This, once we assume that this 3109 minus or 3110 BCE as some Yudhishthira epoch, and we will not discuss the Mahabharata war as such here. We are not interested in Mahabharata war as such, but we are interested in the result that we derive, which is as yet unknown. So what we see is, then there is a Bharata dynasty of 32 kings lasting for 1000 years, and we come up to 2109. Now if you try to correlate the physical evidences which are available to us already, then we know that in 2109 what is flourishing is, in Bharata, the Harappan civilization is flourishing in the Sindhu Sauvira region, and there is a OCP culture flourishing in the Ganga Yamuna plains. Presently, scholars are yet to accept that Ganga Yamuna also had a civilization in this period, which is the OCP period. But the radiocarbon dating is an absolute dating method, and it is now bringing up the new data, and it is absolutely confirmed that Ganga Yamuna was not empty as would have been suggested by the previous studies. It was not empty, it had a culture, and that culture is known by them as OCP, ochre colored pottery culture. Now it is followed by 5 kings of 138 years, and we come all the way up to 1971. This is the end of almost, if you remember, it is the end of almost that Harappan culture, and literature wise we see that this is the twilight of Vedic period, and Sankhya, Yoga, these are the tantric or the tarkic Veda Avirodh sampradayas which are coming up in Bharata. And then we have this Shishunaga period, 10 kings, 362 years, and this has been known from other literature that the Gautama Buddha was a contemporary of this dynasty of Shishunagas, and this is also the last Kshatriya period. So the Vedic way of Janapadas and Kurus, Panchalas, Ikshvakus came to an end at this time with the rise of Nanda as the first imperial system. Nanda was the one, Puranas mention that he was like the other Parshurama. He destroyed all the Kshatriyas, and he is in fact one of the most important characters of this Puranic chronology. And here ended the Vedic phase and a new phase started. Probably the Lipi also began here. There is a huge increase in the literature, which can happen only when scribing is there, because the previous literature has been oral. It has to be remembered verbatim, which only very little of it can be done like this. Unless it is very sacred, nobody would put that much effort into it. But now with the probably invention of the Lipi, we have a lot of literature of this period now. This is followed by Mauryas. The literature is Kautilya Arthashastra, Gurya Sutra, and even the epic. The Mahabharata epic appears to be written post this period, and it lasted for 137 years. The so-called Ashoka also naturally would happen in this period. We will remember this. This was followed by Shunga. Now this is a very interesting dynasty, because there was a Pushyamitra Shunga, the originator of this dynasty, which the modern historians are identifying with the one being mentioned in Patanjal Mahabhashya. But there remember that it is also contemporary to Yavanas according to the Patanjal evidence. Patanjal Mahabhashya evidence, this Pushyamitra is whoever Pushyamitra, there it doesn't say Shunga, remember. And we will show here that this is a misidentification. We have another Pushyamitra below the line, and we will show that he is actually a contemporary of the Yavanas. Okay, so it was followed by Kanvayanas and the Andhras. Now this Andhras appears to be the one where the Shabar Mimamsa Bhashya, because he often refers to the tradition of Andhras referring to themselves as Raja. He mentions this. So these Andhras, and they lasted up to -759. Okay. Now these are the ages without any manipulation, as they are, we have plotted them onto this timeline, and this is followed, this Andhra period is interestingly the sort of end of indigenous period. Till now, foreigners have not been mentioned in this account. And now follows the cumulative period of 1090 years. It starts with Andhra-Pratyas, then Abhiras, then Gardavilas. Now these Gardavilas are very interesting. There is an account in Indian other Jaina accounts where it is said that these Gardavilas were the ones who were displaced by the Shakas. And it is confirmed by this Puranic list. And if you see, when we plot the timings, it actually comes to 3179 years from that Bharata epoch, 2526 years from the Yudhishthira epoch, and in terms of our epoch, it is minus 583, which is the proposed Shaka epoch. As we will see, this is a very important point to note, that it is all coherent. It is sort of a jigsaw puzzle which is falling in place. If you place one piece correctly, then rest of the pieces will fall accordingly, and you won't have to cut the pieces like usually it has to be done. When basically your theory is wrong, what you will have to do is, you will have to manipulate the evidences, you will have to pick and choose. But if your theory is right, then all the evidences at ease will fall into place. There will be no anomalies, and that is rather that is the test of the theory. And then something new should be thrown up by that theory, which precisely that is what we are here to share with. This ends, that period of 1090 years ends at 3440 from the Bharata epoch, and minus 322. Now notice this. This is precisely 323 BCE. End of the period which included, if you notice, Shakas, Yavanas, Turushkas, Gurundas, Maunas, Hunas. Now it naturally means that these are all neighboring, northwestern neighbors of India who have been attacking, making incursions into the mainlands. And they also had a reasonable position in Indian king list. They have been accommodated. And if you notice, this king list is a feature of it, that generally one only dynasty is mentioned at a time in the whole land of India. Max Muller, in his book, he says that India doesn't have a national history. And it is a very common saying nowadays that India was never a political entity. India was made into one single political entity by probably Mughals, and then later on by the British. But then look at these accounts. These accounts for the whole of this big mainland, all the way from Gandharas to the Banga, the Videha, Avanti, all is included, and they have only one dynasty at a time. How if they didn't have an idea of a political entity? But the truth is, in the Vedic times, kings were independent. There used to be one, whoever has to perform Rajasuya, he has to make a Digvijaya, but he doesn't displace anybody. And then there is a single law prevalent throughout the land. And because the Brahmanas and Vaishyas and Shudras, they don't really have an affinity to the land. The affinity to the land is for that ruling clan of the Kshatriyas. That is why they would be called Kurus in the Kuru Janapada. So Janapada name and Kshatriya names are same. So now with this, what we come to is 323 BC, this very interesting period begins. It is said that this is a period of contemporary rulers. This is sort of when India was in a tumultuous situation. There was not a single ruler who can claim to be the ruler of the whole land. And then so many claimants. And who are they? Notice this. This says it is Kilkiya Yavanas. Kilkiya Yavanas. Because of these dates which I was bringing in, I noticed this. Now these accounts have been there already with everybody, but nobody ever thought that these names make any sense. And now it has suddenly, at least to me, it has started making sense, a lot of sense in fact. If you see, and I will try to convince you that, it is at least interesting. Look at this. This is Kilkiya Greeks. Yavanas are Greeks. Now, do you know what is Kilkiya? Kilkiya is the province of present-day Turkey, which was actually the kingdom of Seleucus Nicator. Seleucus Nicator was the king of Kilkiya. And this Puranic list is mentioning Kilkiya Yavanas. And who is his contemporary? Sadachandra Chandramsha of Naga dynasty. Now, note this name, Sadachandra Chandramsha. Now, those who have read those Greek accounts, you know that when Alexander came, his direct contemporary as mentioned in those accounts is Zandrams. Compare the Chandramsha with Zandrams. And do you think this is some indescript king? No. S.C.Rai Choudhury already observed that this Chandramsha is the king of this iron pillar of Mehrauli. This pillar actually used to be in the Udaygiri in Vidisha, and the inscription clearly says that this king won the territory all the way from Balika to the Banga. Now this matches with the Zandrams of Alexander. They are contemporaries, and this is the bilateral identification. You have the Greek king in Indian account along with his contemporary Indian king, and that Indian king is also there in the Greek account. Now this is the bilateral identification, and this would prove that whatever they were thinking, that Chandragupta as Sandracotus, actually that Sandracotus is in the Megasthenes account, and just following this contemporary period of 106 years, which would end in -216, we have the beginning of the Gupta period, which was, as is well known, was begun by Chandragupta. Now notice that Megasthenes came actually at least 50 years after Alexander, and the Greek accounts are very, actually when I read the original accounts, it is actually it's a mistake to consider Zandrams as Sandracotus. Zandrams is contemporary to Alexander, and Sandracotus is the king of Palibotra whom Megasthenes visited. So Sandracotus most probably would be the Chandragupta of the Gupta dynasty, and Zandrams would be the Chandramsha of the Naga dynasty, and he would be somewhere here, and this would be somewhere here. Now this is the discovery. Now how have we come to this? Remember, we basically came because we worked out through evidences, through Indian literature and other secular literature, sacred and secular literature, both literatures we have used, and we have another very interesting thing which is called absolute dating of literature. That is another proposal that we wish to make through this talk, that just like we had this radiocarbon dating method, which is an absolute way of dating the archaeological antiquities, we need to have, because Indian literature has been, everybody is trying to fetch it to its own position, so it has been torn apart. So if we really want to put Indian literature into shape, we need to have some absolute method, and we are suggesting here that the records of observation about the precessional position. Now precession is a phenomena which has been not claimed by Indian mathematicians or astronomers. So there is no chance of extrapolation, because you are not anyways not having a theory for that. So you cannot extrapolate precessional observations, and we will show that how our literature basically supports this chronology or the timeline. The most important result I shared with you, and how we reconstructed. Now this is something most of us are unfamiliar, but we have got to be familiar with. I am not to blame. I am not obscure, and that blame is not because on to me. So we have to. This chronicle appears to be preserved by court poets or priests. So this is a sort of a secular part in a sacred literature. It has nothing to do with their one may disregard their other concepts as mythology and superstition. But this has nothing to do with mythology or superstition. This is a plain chronology as would be found in anywhere in the world. And this is the most important data that we have to figure out how this list is to be interpreted in our times. What it simply says is Yudhishthira Epoch is 2526 before Shaka. So if we know the Shaka Epoch, we know the Yudhishthira Epoch, and we can start the list straight away. It is as simple as that. But unfortunately it was not as simple, because Shaka Epoch itself became a debatable issue. Bharatiya historians had to, they have been, making a great effort to find out what exactly would be this Shaka Epoch. I will show how I came to it. Varahamihira mentions a Romic epoch. In his book Pancha Siddhantika, he talks of a Romic Siddhanta, which he takes as 427 Shaka as its base year. Now this Romic has been shown by his various accounts, especially the duration of the year that he uses as Romic's year is actually exactly that of Hipparchus. Now this Hipparchus is a well-known astronomer of Rome in Rhodes Island, and it is well accepted by all that he belonged to 190 BCE to 120 BCE. So when would one expect Romic epoch? Naturally one would expect it to be in this time. If Hipparchus is observing something and it has been borrowed by Varahamihira, then would he change the epoch? No. And it has to correspond to 427. Now this is for those who have not actually made any effort into this, it might be very difficult as to what I am pointing to, but rather than jump, I will come to it as to what actually it means. So remember that 427 Shaka has to be somewhere in the 1st or 2nd century BCE. This is also confirmed by Varahamihira's own observation. He says that summer solstice in his times has begun to happen in Punarvasu Nakshatra. Now this is his direct record of observation, which can be only put into the 1st century BCE and not, as is claimed later on by the modern scholars. He is claimed in the, if you open any internet page, it will begin like this: Varahamihira, the 6th century AD astronomer of India. It will begin like this. So he has been put to the 6th century AD, while his own observation is possible only in 1st century BC, and it also fits well with the kind of epoch that he uses in his book called Romic epoch. Now we will show, similar to Varahamihira, Varahamihira refers to a further even previous astronomer called Aryabhata, and Aryabhata's epoch is known to be 421 Shaka. And we will later on show also actually how it actually happens, but we demonstrated for ourselves that it is only possible in 26 March minus 163. And of course this is through the help of modern software, these simulators, which are using the best astronomical theories of present to recreate past heavens. We are not recreating terrestrial phenomena, heavens, which are quite reliable. And though the errors increase as we go further back into the times, but around this period they are fairly accurate. And we have been able to convince ourselves that yes, Aryabhatiyam epoch that he uses in his Aryabhatiyam is 26.3 minus 163. And this directly leads, if you add 421 to this, we get minus 583 as the epoch of Shakas. And from this, what we will next do is, that was plain simple, we add that 2526 said by Garga and we come to 3109 for Yudhishthira epoch, and we add 3179 to the same Shaka epoch, we come to the Bharata age as claimed by Aryabhatiyam. We will discuss this, how they are different and why, and it is all fair. It has been already recorded in Indian literature as to such a difference is a valid difference. Another confirmation of this, actually, as we will probably someday invite him also here, Vedavir Arya in 2015, he published a book where he shows that Kurtakoti copper plates, they confirm this 583 BCE. He takes it as 583 BCE, which actually it should be minus 583, which is actually 584 BCE as the Shaka epoch. So remember, we had evidences, we had texts and even epigraphs, which, so this is evidence based. So I will point them out. The Aihol epigraph, very well known for those who are studying in that area, of course. It is in Badami. It is supposed to be of a early Chalukya dynasty and Pulkeshi II. And then it simply says that 3735 years elapsed from Bharata war in Kali age, and also it's a bi-dated, it's a dual dated epigraph, very interesting. It simply says 556 years in Shaka. So if you put this together, it is simply what? The difference between two, if you will find, it is 3179. And in fact, all the Indian astronomers have been using this, that add 3179 to Shaka years to get the Kali years. This is a very common fact. When they work out the Ahargana, the first step that they do is, you take the current Shaka year, the elapsed Shaka years, add 3179 to it, and you get the Kali years. And then you convert, you multiply by these and etc. you do, and then you get the day count. Like the modern astronomers get the Julian date, they get the Julian day, and that is how the astronomy is based. Even modern astronomy is based like that, on Julian day. Indian astronomy was based on Kali Ahargana, and that is how they used to do it. Only trouble is which Shaka to use. Till now, all the scholars unanimously have been using 78 CE Shalivahana Shaka as the Shaka. Now, if you use, now this is the source of all the trouble. If you put 78 CE as Shaka epoch, then what you get is the well-known date, 16/2 minus 3101 as the Kali epoch. You might have heard of it. If you have ever taken interest in this, this is a very famous 3102 BCE is the Kali age, and that is also the Mahabharata, and all scholars working in Mahabharata chronology, and we will see soon in February. Most of them would be talking about 36 years before this, 36 years after this, because of the various Puranic accounts that, you know, it started with the death of Krishna, or it started with the going away of Yudhishthira, and so on. So it is 36 years before and around, but it is around this date only. And all this is assuming 78 CE is the Shaka epoch. Now, Is this clear? Now if you assume this 78 CE Shaka, what will happen? You will reflect back upon what we were doing. If this is 78 CE Shaka, then naturally Aryabhata will be in the 5th century AD, and then followed by Varahamihira in the 6th century. Okay, and then what will happen? If Aryabhata is in the 5th century, his descriptions, what is describing the sky, he is saying that at Chaitra Shukla Pratipada, the vernal equinox, the sun has entered into vernal equinox in first point of Aries, Meshadi, beginning of Ashwini Nakshatra also. Now where did he get from this Mesha from? Of course he got it from the Westerners. He got it from the, generally believed, from Babylonians and Chaldeans, generally referred to as Paulisha Siddhanta in our literature. Now if they borrowed the Mesha Rashi from Paulish Siddhanta, one wonders as to why he should manipulate the first point of Mesha. If somebody borrows Mesha, would he not naturally borrow the first point of Mesha also? As to where it begins, that Mesha Rashi in the sky, where it is supposed to begin. And if it is happening there, then as I have shown, if you really take what the Romans and Polish have been taking as the, because Mesh is Prasiddha in their literature, Ashwini is Prasiddha in your literature, Aryabhata is merging two, and if he is merging both of them, then it leaves no space for you to maneuver but to bring our Shaka to 26.3 minus 163, and then our Shaka epoch will be in 583 minus 583, which confirms with that our Puranic list as I had shown before. Now, how chronologists use? Chronologists used a Laukik era called Saptarshi era. This is not an astronomical era. It is merely a way of nomenclature of centuries. Centuries are named by the names of nakshatras. So this is 27 nakshatras multiplied by 100. So this is a cycle of calendar for 2700 years. And in that 2700 year calendar, these chronologies have been enumerated, and there in that Garga sentence comes of 2526 years from Shaka year as the Yudhishthira Epoch. So you will remember this. This is one of the most important evidences. And from that, the Nandas were, there are other confirmations. Nandas are 1500 years in Yudhishthira Epoch, and Andhras ended in 2336 years in Yudhishthira Epoch, and that all fits. And I was talking about the difference between that 3179 and 2526. It has been confirmed by this Kalahana account, which has baffled most of the scholars. People have been claiming, in fact, the Bharatiya scholars have been claiming that Kalahana made a mistake. Either he made a mistake, or even they claim that Britishers, they allege that Buehler, when he got this Kalahana account in Kashmir, he made a forgery and he added a verse there in Kalahana's Rajatarangini. But it appears to us improbable also and unnecessary also, because actually it is in fact it is a nice confirmation of this difference of Aryabhata's Yugapada and the Kali of the rest of the astronomers called Saur Siddhantas. I will not burden you with this, but actually sufficient here to say that what people have been taking is Aryabhata had equal yugas. Remember, Kali, Dwapar, Treta and Kruta. For Aryabhata they are all equal length, 10,80,000 years. And for others, if you are you are embarked on this journey, you would know that it is in the ratio of 1:2:3:4. So 4,32,000 years is Kali, twice is Dwapar, thrice is Treta and 4 times is Kruta. Total is again the same, 43,20,000. That is the Yuga, called Mahayuga by the Sauras and Yuga by Aryabhata. But point to be noted is, naturally how can the Kali be same actually? It need not be same. and it is anyways a mathematical extrapolation. Now this is very important when one studies the evidences, especially when one is going into such past, one has to be very careful. What is your mathematical extrapolation? Not done today. Extrapolation done somewhere by Aryabhata. But extrapolation done by Aryabhata is an extrapolation nevertheless. It is not something which is observing. And what is observing in his times is a record of observation. Do you understand this difference? This is very important for us to understand. If even today, if I make an extrapolation, if I theorize, that has a different weight than if I observe something. And if I am truthful, I am assuming in both cases I am truthful. Okay? So, this is how it goes. This 78C Shaka, if you use, then there is a glaring disparity with the records of observation. As I just mentioned, their observation of the position of equinoxes, they simply don't match with the kind of assumption about their date comes. Okay? Now this is the anomaly. And remember, any new theory has to come up to resolve an anomaly. If there is an anomaly in a present theory, we offer another theory. And if all the anomalies are resolved, then we start believing in that theory, and then we will expect that theory to deliver a result. And that is what exactly it has done. It has delivered a result. It has delivered the result of Kilkiya Yavanas as a contemporary of Chandramsha. Remember this, and I am now, basically what I am enumerating is now how the theory has been built up by us. So the other anomaly is the description of Varahamihir's, he describes the geography, he describes the Janapadas, he describes the people around him. Contemporary people they have to be. And what he describes in Brihat Samhita, they simply don't exist in 5th century in India. He talks of Kurus and Panchalas, and he talks of all sorts of things, It simply doesn't exist out there. He doesn't talk of Chalukyas, and he doesn't talk of them. He talks of Ashmaka Janapada, which was the Janapada of Aryabhata. It doesn't exist anymore in 5th century. Aryabhata is well known to be of Ashmak Janapada. It was present in 2nd century BC, and it has disappeared around this time. So, these are the anomalies for which, to resolve them, we needed a theory. Now, these are the results of our method of precession, MOP, I am coining, and the whole literature can be sieved and sorted for records of observation. If it has something where it discusses seasons along with lunar months, or because they are not aware of the phenomena of precession, but they will be discussing their whereabout. They would be talking something like Falgun is the first month of Shishira. Now you know Falgun is the second month of almost Vasanta. There is a shift of almost 3 months. Then later on, most of the literature would be talking Magha as the first month of Shishira. Very interesting. There is naturally change of 1 month. When they talk of Magha as the first month of Shishira, they also talk of Shravan as the first month of rains. All our Smartha literature belongs to that period. And it is actually 2000 years. It takes 2000 years for such a shift. And that is when their calendar is revised. And the next revision of calendar was done when actually this was also no more tenable, as Varahamihira categorically says, that in the previous times the Shravishtartha, he says the Ashleshartha was the solar solstice, that was in the time of Vedang Jyotisha, and then he says in my times it has started happening in Punarvasu. He states, he is still not aware of precession, mind you. He is not aware of theory of precession. He is actually thinking it is some aberration. They call it the theory of trepidation. They are thinking that this equinox only shifts by 24 degrees along this center of Ashwini, and it comes back to Ashwini after making a circle of 48 degrees, and that is actually the time it takes for that. It will take 3600 years, and that is in fact how Aryabhata is extrapolating from his time, because he is assuming that in his time he is observing Ashwini is happening in vernal equinox. He assumes that in the beginning of this yuga, also it was happening in Ashwini, which is absolutely false. And hence he says, he simply extrapolates that because according to his theory, it will take 3600 years at the rate of 48 minutes, seconds per year. It takes 3600 years to make that complete oscillation of 48 degrees, and it comes back to Ashwini, and that is what he is thinking. So this is all plain, we can make it up. This sort of a forensic analysis, because if somebody has made a mistake, then one has to recover that mistake also. It's a genuine mistake, and one has to sort this out, and this is how the method of precession, it would be interesting because it connects our previous talks, and it will show you how it actually built up the confidence. Because ultimately, these modern people have been saying Vedas, the Rig Veda is the oldest in 1500 BC at the most, and so on. From there to make such a bold step, it needs confidence, and for that one needs some strong basis, and that was given as I developed in our previous talks. Actually, all the Veda Shakas unanimously talk of Kritika as the nakshatra in the beginning of Vasanta Rutu. And they also talk of, at the same time, they also talk of Falgun Purnima as the beginning of New Year. And Falgun Shukla Paksha as the first Paksha after winter solstice, that is Uttarayanam. Now all this is datable, it is shifted by 82 degrees from present, and it is datable to 3940 BCE. This was precisely the date that was given by Tilak in Orion. And Taittiriya Samhita we further studied in detail, and we found that Falgun Shukla Dashmi is the period in Taittiriya Samhita and Tande Brahman datable to 3580 BCE, and then we have Kaushitaki Brahman datable to Maghamavasya and winter solstice, which comes to around 2860 BCE, and then we have the late Shaka in the Yajnavalkya tradition, Jaiminiya Brahman. We can bring it all the way up to Magha Krishna Ashtami called Ekashtaka in winter solstice, that will come to 2360. And this is very important evidence. There is a text called Maitrayani Aranyaka. Now this is a sort of a Khilakanda of Vedas, and it sort of refers to somebody like Gautam Buddha. Though it is debatable, it talks of one Bhagavan Shakya Putra. It talks of something like and then Maitrayani Aranyaka is more interesting for us because it specifically for the first time in this literature mentions the Surya Nakshatra. Till now we never find Surya being, Surya Nakshatra being mentioned directly. And here is something like, a direct evidence. It says categorically that winter solstice is happening in Shravishta Ardha, which is datable to quite a precise time of around 240 years around this period of 1900 BCE. Now this is all incontrovertible. Nobody can actually take this anywhere, and one can easily confirm this. And this Vedant Jyotish, another very interesting text, as we pointed out previously also, that it is in the post-Maurya phase, and this is Shravishtadi. It says, look at this, the Maitrayani Aranyaka says Shravishta Ardha, and this says the winter solstice is happening in the beginning of Shravishta. Do you know? This is actually a statement of, precession, but they are not aware that it is, the phenomena is precession. They are thinking that, but they are not connecting these two, but they are simply stating as a record of observation in their present time. He says simply that winter solstice is happening in the beginning of Shravishta. Okay, and this is datable directly for us now easily to 1450. Is it not convincing? And then later literature, we can very easily show that, like, this Mahabharata text, you might be wondering as to where is Mahabharata epic. Mahabharata epic actually talks of Bhishma Nirvana in Magha Shukla Saptami. Very categorically it says. Now people have been thinking that by some, like scholars have been trying to fetch this by introducing some Adhik Masa 1 or 2 and then bring it back to the expected time of Mahabharata. But actually nothing of the sort is needed. What it simply shows that in the times of, when actually it is being written, when it is actually being composed, it is happening, the winter solstice is happening in Magha Shukla Saptami, which is datable to around 1000 BC. And because they are unaware that this is a very systematic phenomena, they did not take care to extrapolate. They simply mentioned it as if it would be happening in the times of Mahabharata also. Do you understand this? Now this is a very interesting thing. And of course then last was the Aryabhata and Varahamihira. And this is the method of precession. And this is, I am suggesting as a method of historiography. How to judge the evidences. And in this light only, this is a sort of a skeleton of Indian literature. In this frame only one has to date those literatures. If somebody claims because of relative measures, like somebody says that the Brahmanas would take 200 years to develop in India, no, nothing doing. If it doesn't fit with this, it is simply, it is a vague claim anyways, and hence it should be discarded. So this is the way the literature all the way up to the secular literature has been dated. Of course after this period we need not even have such data because a lot more refined data is available later on. So this is the story of lost Shaka epoch. So this is just a sort of a historical account, not very important for our studies, but just to show that people have been searching. It is not that this is out of a blue. Kota Venkatachalam, he started this debate of lost Shaka in mid-50s. Actually it was raised by T.S. Narayan Shastri all the way in 19th century, but he had some very debatable claims. Like he says that he has a manuscript of Kali Yuga Rajavrittanta, and I also wasted a lot of time. Actually this is nowhere to be found, and such things can damage the search actually and studies. But anyways, lately we have this Vedvir Arya, and his claim is based on the Kurtakoti copper plate, and he studied the total solar eclipse of 9 May -53 according to 5 millennia catalogue of NASA, and he made a slight mistake there. He took -53 as 583 BCE. Actually it should be corrected to 584 BCE, and then we also would tell you that such an important epigraph, this is a copper plate and it has been declared spurious by present modern historians. It's a point to be noted. If we push aside evidences like this, then it can be really very dangerous. But then of course, one has to be careful. If they have already declared it spurious for some reasons like paleographic accounts and this and that, one needs to study them. And we have not done all that study, but because we have alternate ways of confirming this, and hence we can take this as at least a lead. And then this is how we ended up with this Aryabhatiyam epoch. If we take 78 CE as the Shaka epoch, then we worked out the, through these modern simulations, like what is the actual position of sky in, let's say, 498, 499. Nowhere in this period, which is the expected 421 Shaka for Aryabhata, nowhere does the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada fall onto when the sun enters the vernal equinox. This is a direct disproof of their assumption, and it confirms our hypothesis that 26-3 - 163 is the Aryabhatiyam epoch, which is the most crucial one for our studies. And with this, rest was actually sort of which we already discussed. And this is another fall off of our theory. If Aryabhata would be in the 2nd BCE, do you realize what would be the impact? Supposing this claim is, valid, then it would mean that he is a world leader in mathematics, and the history of science of the whole world will simply be revolutionized. So naturally people are going to bitterly contest, and of course the truth has to face such things, right? So I welcome the scholars to challenge this, verify, critically analyze this, and if it stands, it will be a wonderful benefit to Bharatiya history. Well, this is what the modern scholars have been doing. So we are running out of time. Thank you.